And I would define trauma as bad things happening that shouldn't happen, or good things that are supposed to happen not happening. But it's not specifically about the thing that happens, it's about what happens inside of us as a result of what happened. And the most common thing that happens inside of us when we go through trauma is that we didn't have the resources to navigate the painful situation. So we disconnected from that pain.
Okay, this is a new thing I'm doing with the podcast. I get people who contact me wanting to be guests on the podcast, and even though I don't really do that many interviews, for some reason I just thought, yeah, let me do that, and let me not do any research on them, and let me just see what happens. So this first one is with Julian Bermudez, and let's see what happens. I'm just going to let him in now. So, hello. It's
Hello.
Am I getting the pronunciation of your surname correct? Is it Bermudez, or is there a different way to pronounce it?
No, that's perfectly fine. Thank you for asking.
Okay. So, hello, Julian. How are you?
Hi. John, I'm doing pretty well. Yourself? Thanks for having me, by the way.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm doing well. Thank you. I pretty much set everything up, and then I had to go to something, and I've just kind of run in, and my headphones didn't work, so I had to, usual technical stuff.
Sure, sure.
And what made you end up doing this kind of work?
I had a very traumatic childhood myself. Um, and when I was in my early 20s, I was carrying around so much trauma from all of the years of abuse and negligence and so on that I couldn't keep living that way anymore. And so really just had a breaking point where I just said, that's enough. I'm done with this. I'm going to give everything I have to transforming my life. And one thing, when you're stuck in those patterns of that trauma and the patterns of abuse and maybe even mistake connection, attachment, compassion for abuse, it's very difficult to find new patterns outside of that. So when I would carve everything out of my life and then try and build up a new life, it would very frequently have some traces or some resemblance of the old patterns. And so it was just a continuous process of trying to figure this out. And, over the course of about 15 years of really trying to figure out how to transform my own pain is how I really came into this practice myself.
Right.
How long have you been doing this for, John?
Um, 90. Well, I started in 91, I think it was. So what's that? My maths is not great. 25 and, I don't know, over 30 years. 30.
And what got you into it as well?
I'd never had any interest in working with people as a healer. I was, worked in film and TV and did not identify at all with that. And I was talking to somebody about getting enlightened, and they said if I was serious about getting enlightened, I'd do craniosacral therapy. And I was like, what's that? Never heard of it. And they explained a little bit about it, and I thought, nah, that's bullshit. And I avoided it for about 6 months, and I went from never having heard about craniosacral therapy to, and at the time I was living in a rural part of the world of Ireland. I wasn't in the city or anything, but I kept coming across it every second or third day. There'd be some reference to craniosacral therapy. And this went on, I resisted it for about 6 months. And it was so intense by the end, I wouldn't have been surprised if a big truck went by, with craniosacral therapy written on the side. So I went back to that original friend, and he had a natural therapies clinic in the the city near where I lived. And normally his desk was a mess of just stuff, you know. And that day I walked in, his desk was completely empty, and right in the middle was just this little blue brochure, because it's, you know, back in the 90s, for craniosacral therapy, for the next like training in craniosacral therapy. And so I just walked in and went, okay, I think that's for me. I took the brochure and started to learn it. And I was really a fish out of water with it. You know, I can remember like the first day, and there everyone was doing a get to know you, kind of going around, and people were like, oh, well, I've been a massage therapist for blah, blah, number of years, or I'm a district nurse, or I'm a physiotherapist. You know, when it got to me, it was like, I just had an exhibition of my photography that I've been touring around the west of Ireland. You know, I became friends with the teachers afterwards, and they were like, yeah, we were like, what is this guy doing here? Like, he just should not be here. But yeah, so that's how I got started.
Have you been in Ireland the whole time then?
No, I lived in Australia for 10 years,
Ah,
from 96 to 2006, which is
okay.
why my accent is confused. Or told. I can't hear it. Like, I can't hear my accent at all. And when I lived in Australia, apparently I did have an Australian accent, because when I'd come back to Ireland, my family would fall around the place laughing at me. But in Australia, everybody said I had a really strong Irish accent. So I don't know. I can't hear it.
Mm. Yeah, my partner is Irish, and she spent some time in her childhood living there as well, and so that's a very high point and a place for us to go visit at some point and possibly spend some time there. So
Yeah,
it's
well,
nice. We
it's
love the idea of the countryside, like kind of where you're at too.
yeah, yeah. No, I live in a really lovely part of Ireland. It's very beautiful, very wild and rugged, and yeah, I like it very much. Yeah, I'm not
Is
from.
it?
I'm from the city. I'm from the capital city, Dublin, but I
Hmm.
live. I live like as far away from Dublin as it's possible to get, really, and it's very wild here. Just, I really like it.
Beautiful. Yeah, that's right up our alley too.
Good. Well, you have to come and say hello when you come. When you finally come.
Yeah, yeah, I'll definitely keep your contact saved, and yeah, if we come out that way, I'm sure we will at some point. I'll give you a hello because we'd love to see the real wild parts of Ireland as well.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. No, it's a lovely place. So, as I said, I don't normally do interviews. So I do them not on this podcast anyway. But for some reason, I thought, yeah, okay, let's let's start, but let me not do any research. So I don't know. I purposely did not look up your website or Instagram or anything like that. So I don't know what you do, and I don't know why you want to talk to me.
So is that a question?
Well, it's a beginning, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, it sure is. Yeah, well, I'm happy to be here with you. Thanks for taking the time, even though we don't know each other.
So, what made you get in touch?
Yeah, I was looking for people who do similar work, who are interested in perhaps maintaining and preserving and developing the human experience. And we're really cultivating ways to tap into authenticity and finding ways to heal. And through my searches, you came up. And that's when I reached out to you.
Right. I don't really understand what you mean by that, by the what you said about the human experience. Could you explain that a bit?
Yeah, it's a sense of reconnecting to who we are, reconnecting to the inherent wisdom that's inside of us, and being more authentic to who we are. So we get disconnected through lots of ways in our society and through our lives. And so it's more from what I see as a process of returning back to who we were before all of these painful things happened that forced us to adapt in specific ways.
Right. I think I understand. I don't use that kind of language myself, and I don't think
Hmm.
of it in that way, but I think I understand what you mean. Um, I think for when you say return back to the way we were before, I, is that possible? I kind of think that even if you release trauma, that you're still changed by the experience of it. So you can't really go back.
Right. Yeah, there's no undoing the things that have happened, of course. You can't change the past, but we can integrate those experiences into who we are, and we can cultivate things like awareness so we can become aware of when that adaptation to the pain or the trauma is active, and we can cultivate agency, making choices to choose to do things differently. We can choose to cultivate responsibility for ourselves, and we can choose to step outside of that adaptation, that pattern that originated from the pain, and choose to reconnect with who we would have been outside of that. Because that part of us still does exist. It's not that it ever went away. It's just that we became disconnected from it. So it's more of a process of building awareness, making choices, taking responsibility, and returning back to who we are outside of all of those adaptations.
Yeah, I don't know about choosing. Can we choose? When you're triggered by something or when something happens, I kind of think of it more in terms of speed of consciousness. Like if your consciousness can be fast enough that you can be ahead of something, then,
Hmm.
I mean, maybe we're talking about the same thing, but there's a big space when I hear like about, choosing different things to sort of, there's a space there to feel like you're screwing it up if you don't, or if you just react, or if you snap at somebody, or if you do all those kind of things. And it can feel like there isn't much choice in that moment.
Yeah, especially at the beginning of this practice, there is no choice. We just say, that's the way it is, or that's the way I am, or I see what's happening this way. My perceptions and my emotions and my thought patterns are deeply entrenched, and that would be the activation or the triggering that's happening of this familiar pattern. So, in the beginning, before we can really start to build awareness around this, there is next to no choice that's involved. But as we continue to build a practice of connecting with that pain and identifying it and building a relationship with that pattern of adaptation that's there, whatever it is, whether it's, people pleasing or distracting or making ourselves big and grandiose, whatever the pattern is, the more that we can relate with it and connect with it and build a relationship with it, the more we can get familiar with it. And then we can identify when it's going to become activated. And ideally, we'll spend enough time beforehand when it's not activated, just connecting with it and understanding, why is it here? What are the unmet needs, and how can I comfort and soothe this before it gets activated? So those are all choices. And what that allows us to do is, in those moments where this pain or this pattern gets activated, is we get a little bit of a buffer, a little bit more space to enact some choice rather than it just flooding over us getting triggered and activated, and then the water flows down the familiar channel. Now we have a new channel that we've been carving, and we can make a choice of which way it's going to go.
Maybe tell me about the practice. When you say the practice, what does that involve?
Hmm. It's a practice of connecting with ourselves. So if we're looking at it from the sense of trying to connect with these adaptations to trauma, there's numerous ways that we can start to become familiar with it. For instance, one of the most common ways is there's a feeling in the body that is associated with this pattern of adapting to trauma. So it might be like a knot in the stomach or a weight in the stomach, or a heat or a heaviness in the chest. Your heart might be fluttering. There might be a constriction in your breathing. There might be a choking sensation in the throat. Your jaw might be clenching. Your muscles might be tight. The first thing we want to do is we want to start to turn our attention into those physical feelings. Of course, this is just one way to connect with it to start it. So you just sit, you turn your attention inward, and you start to connect with those familiar feelings that are usually right underneath the surface for a lot of people. And that's where we start to get curious. So we just carve out time repeatedly throughout the day to connect with these feelings in our body. And we ask questions like, how often do I feel this? Do I feel it every day? Do I feel it multiple times a day? And if so, when can I first remember feeling this? So where in my life did this feeling originally develop? Very frequently, it goes back to very early in our lives, childhood. So then we say, okay, when I was a child, even if we identify it in our 20s or in our late teenagers, it's usually fully developed at that point. So then we say, okay, when I was a child, I was feeling this thing. What were the things that I needed? What was happening in the environment? And what were my unmet needs? And so we just continue to try to connect with this feeling in our body so that way we can understand why it's here, what the teaching is, what the wisdom is, and what the unmet needs are underneath it. And then we try to continuously meet those needs in healthy, constructive ways. The more that we do that, the more that when this feeling or this pattern gets activated or triggered, then we can have that buffer, a little bit of time to make some choice and a little bit more of a pathway to choose different things.
Right. So that's what you do with people, is it?
More or less, I have the assumption that all the wisdom that knows how to heal, all the wisdom that knows how to be whole, this dynamic human spirit, so to speak, it's inside of each and every one of us, and it's developed over the course of millions, if not billions of years. And all of that information is accessible to each and every one of us. And so when I work with somebody, what I do is I help them to reconnect with all of that wisdom that's inside of them.
Just jumping into this episode to tell you about Patreon. If you're enjoying these episodes, if you're getting something from them and you'd like to help out, the idea is like if you met me in person, would you like to have a cup of tea with me? Well, you can, at least the tea part at least, because for roughly around the price of a cup of tea, depending on where you are in the world, you can help. You can help with these podcasts on Patreon. So I'd really appreciate it if you did. And thank you if you're already supporting me on Patreon. And if you want to, it's just Patreon/John Dalton Podcasts. And it would mean a lot to me. Thanks very much.
I work in a different kind of way. For me, maybe it's similar. I kind of think of people's. Well, it seems like we're all in the process of becoming more conscious. That seems to be what everybody's doing, one way or another, turning unconsciousness into consciousness. And I'll talk with people for sure, but the really powerful stuff happens. Well, maybe it's both, but a lot of powerful stuff happens when the person lies down wherever they are, and then I'll work with their system behind the scenes, and we'll kind of both go into what I kind of call the mystery. It's kind of like the place that we go to in deep dreamless sleep, where there's nothing to speak of. So I will sort of meet their system there and then follow along. It's similar to what you're saying, like knowing that their system knows how to fix itself and I'm just going to help. I often think of it, it's a bit like, the myth of, I think it's Prometheus, the guy rolling the ball up the hill.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it often feels like that a person's system is sort of trying to roll this ball up the hill and gets halfway and then collapses and rolls back down again. And what I do is I just kind of walk along beside them, and I mean, being able to feel when their system is about to collapse is a helpful, very helpful skill. And then when their system is about to collapse, I'll just sort of metaphorically hold the ball. Just, I won't push it forward or anything like that. I'll just hold it while their system gathers, rebuilds its resources, or and then it can move it a little bit further along, and then when it's about to collapse, I'll hold it again until it gets to the top. And then, because I'm working with them at such a deep level, then that ripples up into their consciousness in whatever way. Whether it's maybe they're conscious of things, sort of the things you were talking about, or not. Maybe they just don't have that pain anymore, whether it's a physical pain, or maybe they don't have that disease anymore, or they don't have whatever it is anymore. So the talking part for me is helping that percolation process of this deep shift come up in their system, rather than because some people I find, because I teach meditation as well, it's a very specific kind of meditation for growth and consciousness, but some people are not, it's not their thing. I can just tell it's not going to. And for some people, it's absolutely not the not thing, because they'll just drive themselves mad with it. It'll be too painful for them. There needs to be more healing happening inside first before they can begin to get to it. So that's the way I work. Does that resonate with what you're talking about?
It seems very similar. Could you tell me what a little bit more about the system that you're referring to? Is it the nervous system, emotional system? Is it their overall system?
Yeah, sort of mind, body, spirit, the whole package.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. So in that sense, we're doing something very similar. So you're bringing people's consciousness, their awareness, back to a state where they can actively engage with it and develop it and use it more. And it can
No,
grow.
they're asleep.
Right, they're asleep, right?
No,
So,
I don't mean that metaphorically, like in a consciousness kind of way. Well, they lie down, and I say to them, look, if you notice any changes in the sensation in your body, I turn my camera and microphone off usually while I do that bit. Lasts for about half an hour, and then we'll come back and then we'll talk about it. So they're not conscious. I'm not consciously bringing them anywhere.
Sure. So it's kind of like a dream state?
Well, I don't know what it's like for them, but they are not... like sometimes they'll feel things. Sometimes they'll see things. Sure. Sometimes they'll have emotions come up.
Okay.
But from my perspective, it's like I'm pulling back from existence. I'm pulling back right back into the mystery, and that's where I meet their system, and that's where the change happens, the releases happen, whether it's trauma release or whatever. And then that release, because it happens down at the very depths of who they are, that it percolates up in their system and expresses itself in whatever way is congruent with their story and what the story of their life is.
Okay. So it sounds like they're still having an experience. They're feeling things. They might have some memory of these things, but it sounds like we're getting some of those conditioned minds or defense mechanisms out of the way. So that way you could interact more deeply with their system, so to speak, beyond whatever barriers might be stopping you or them from interacting with it.
Yeah, I wouldn't use that language because like my grounding is in craniosacral therapy. That's kind of that's the discipline, if you like, I came through. So I kind of think of it more in terms of trauma, trauma being stuck in the person's body, and then trauma
Hmm.
releasing, and
Sure.
their body returning to a more natural or pre-traumatized kind of state. I mean, as I said, you can never can go back, but their body can express itself more
Sure.
naturally. So I suppose
Okay.
the roll in the ball up the hill thing is a little bit like that. Their system trying to release trauma or trying to
Sure.
find
Sure.
harmony or homeostasis or whatever,
Okay.
and just being stuck.
Okay. Well, from that angle, it sounds very similar. So I everything that I work with is based off of trauma as well. And I would define trauma as bad things happening that shouldn't happen or good things that are supposed to happen not happening. But it's not specifically about the thing that happens, it's about what happens inside of us as a result of what happened. And the most common thing that happens inside of us when we go through trauma is that we didn't have the resources to navigate the painful situation. So we disconnected from that pain. So the hallmark that I see of trauma is that there's a disconnection from oneself. We suppress our emotions, for instance, and we disconnect from the things that we're feeling. This is because when we go through trauma, especially as children, and there's really painful things that are happening, there's only so many ways that we can navigate it. You can set boundaries with it. You can tell it to stop. You can say, don't treat me that way. Treat me this way. But if it's your parents, for instance, that are the people who are causing the pain, we don't even know that we have the ability to set boundaries. And two, it might make things more dangerous. So we can't set boundaries. You can go away physically to get away from the pain, but as children, we're dependent on our relationships, so we can't go away physically. So that's when the survival mechanism, the third option, kicks in, which is we go away mentally. We disconnect from our bodies. And this right here is underlying almost every example of trauma that I've ever seen is some sort of disconnection to the self. And so, if we want to start to heal the trauma, if we want to start to perhaps release it, the first thing that we have to do is start to reconnect with ourselves with those feelings. And it sounds like that might be maybe not the language that you're using, but something very similar. And that's the goal that I have too, is to help people transcend those disconnections that they have to themselves so that way they could tap back into one, the things that they're feeling, and of course, all the information and wisdom that comes along with those.
But don't you find that, like, with, like, often the traumas that I, work with people, they're so grisly, they're so awful, that people, they can't even come close to the emotions, and sometimes they don't even aware of the trauma because it's so
Hmm.
awful that it's been blocked out. All they can see is, um, like, I used to get a regular thing when I don't see people in person anymore. It's all distance work now, but I used to, I live in an agricultural part of the country, and you just get these farmers would come in with back pain, or and they're thinking like you're the doctor kind of thing, so just fix me kind of thing, and they lie down, and I would connect with their system, and very obviously like some deep horrible uh, trauma from childhood, some sort of abuse, some sort of grisly horrible abuse, and they don't have any connection to it at all. They don't have
Hmm.
any. All they know is they've got a back pain.
Yeah.
And often, like, I would have to work through that with them, find a way, because sometimes their system would go, yeah, no, they've got to remember. And I would be like, oh no. But then other times it would be like, no, they don't have to remember. Just fix the disharmony at the base and it'll all kind of work out.
Yeah. Yeah, that's coming back to another way of phrasing just what I was talking about a moment ago, which is when we went through that pain, if it was too much pain for us to navigate, if we couldn't be with it, then the survival mechanism kicks in and we disconnect from it. A lot of the times it's pushed out of our conscious awareness, it's pushed out of memory. We might not have any memory of it.
Hmm.
It might have happened before the cognitive parts of our brain that can conceptually remember things existed,
Hmm.
but our bodies remember it and
Hmm.
it's stored in our bodies. So that practice that I was talking about is designed to try to bring our awareness back to our bodies. The more and more that we can build safety and comfort, so to speak, of being with pain and being with the discomfort. So the more that we build the capacity to navigate pain, the more that those repressed memories of that trauma become accessible. So when I'm working with people, yeah, I see some terrible things that have happened to people. And the more and more that they're able to connect with the feelings in their body, maybe it's back pain, maybe it's something in their chest or in their gut. And the more that they're able to connect with it and build the relationship and start to make space for this inside of them, the more that they can start to build the safety to process that pain. And the more that we can really start to connect with it and see what those unmet needs were that are underneath that pain. And then they can start to try to meet those needs in healthy, constructive ways. That's where I find that the whole relationship with that pain transforms, usually very quickly too. And the pain that they were having or the patterns that they were in, they start to build some sort of agency around that, some sort of choice, some responsibility in the ways that they can engage with it. So if they were trying to distract to get away from it and they had a pattern of addictions or various forms of escape, providing short-term relief, they can see that as a way to escape from that pain that was underneath there and they can make choices on how they're going to work with it.
It sounds like the sort of people that you work with are they're ready to. They mightn't be able to access it, but they're ready to look. Is that right?
I think so. Um, you know, it's very difficult for me to work with people who aren't ready. There's thresholds that I have set up for people just to find me or just to start to work with me that they have to cross. And so, yeah, there has to be some sort of conviction, some sort of desire to really want to transform the pain that they're carrying around or to
Hmm.
transform the way that they're living life. If that readiness, if that conviction to do it isn't there, um, yeah, I simply don't have the ability to to lead them through anything constructive. So that's usually the first threshold that I look for is how convicted are they to this process? How ready, how committed are they to transforming and taking responsibility for their pain and for their own life?
Thresholds sounds good. Well, how do you do that?
What do you mean?
Like when you say there are thresholds they have to cross before you'll work with them, like what does that practically look like? Is it just talking with them or?
Well, just to find me, I don't do I just started doing like these conversations. So this is one way that we're putting the information out, but just for people to identify me and to say this is somebody I want to work with, usually they have to go through a significant amount of searching just to come across me. So those are the types of thresholds just in terms of coming to me. And then, yeah, there's when we start working together. I do like a consultation beforehand, and then we do a screening session, which is 2 hours long. And the first hour and a half is pure therapy work where we're going straight for the core of what's bringing them in. And this is where they really start to get a taste for the type of work that we're going to be doing. And of course, there's no financial obligation to move forward, but this is the first threshold where they get a really good taste of what it's going to look like to turn into that pain rather than trying to get away from it.
Hmm.
Um, like you said, I think a lot of people have this idea that in terms of like the lens of modern medicine, that there's some sort of magic pill or there's some magical healers out there who they can just come and we'll sing an Icaro or something and boom, the pain's gone. But I've never seen anything like that. As far as I know, that's not how it works. So the threshold that people really have to cross is that willingness to walk through the door, so to speak, and then I just help them find it.
And how long do you see people for?
It depends on each person. I do everything individualized, but for the most part, it's somewhere between 6 to 8 weeks, sometimes 12. And then what we do is we do these intensive, these regimens where we really focus on building this practice and really focus on building that relationship with oneself. And then what's really important afterwards is that they go and try it. And so I help them to really formulate the practice, but I can't do it for them. So they have to go back into their lives, into their environment, into their communities, and they have to continue to develop and nurture this practice on their own. And then when they get stuck or they hit barriers and they want some more support, maybe 3 months later, 6 months later, a year later, then they usually come back and then we do the process again.
Right. Uh, it's normally just one to one, but then every now and then you get people together, is it? And did I understand that right?
Sometimes, yeah, I usually work with people directly at one-on-one, or I might have, my co-facilitators who are involved as well. But I really enjoy working with people specifically individually. And then what might end up happening is multiple people who I'm working with individually might come together all at the same time and work together in that sense.
And what other is that? Do you have other things that you do, or?
Well, I call this type of therapy psychedelic therapy, and in the sense that the word psychedelic is referring to psyche, and then delic is manifesting, arising, emerging, and the psyche referring to the immaterial aspects of who we are. So our consciousness, our thinking patterns, our perceptions, our emotional patterns. It's really talking about the human spirit. So you have the humanist spirit emerging or manifesting. And so all of our therapy is designed to have that experience. We get to that means through reflection, through inquiry, through meditation. Those are the main tools that we get there. But people also have deeper psychedelic experiences as well, where that conditioned mind and all of those survival defenses can really soften for just a little bit, and we can really push past those to really connect with perhaps that system that you're talking about.
Okay, well, it's been lovely chatting with you, Julian. Thanks for getting in touch. It's nice to
Yeah,
hear
John,
what you're
very
doing.
happy. Thank you. Yeah, very happy to connect with you as well.
All right, let's say goodbye for now then.
Take care of yourself, John. Very nice to meet you.
You too. Bye bye.